Welcome to Season 12, Episode 10 of the Young Hearts Run Free podcast. We have a very special guest with us this week. It is none other than our Yorkshire Correspondent, Mel Sykes. How are you doing, Mel?
I'm doing great, John. How are you?
Oh, I am doing very well. I'm very excited about this conversation. We're going to chat about your most recent adventure. But let me ask you a
Yes,
question. Let me ask you a question first of all.
go
Today,
on then.
it's Friday the 24th of January, right? What were you doing this time last week?
This time last week, I was somewhere over the Cheviot Hills, I think.
Hmm.
When did I finish? Friday, like Friday evening. So this time I would have been, I don't even know how long that last bit took. Ages, bloody ages.
Hmm.
Yes, I would have been somewhere, probably setting off. I would either be curled up in a ball on the floor of Burness Church trying to get some sleep, or I would have already set off on the last slog over the Cheviots, I think.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it was Friday. I travelled through to Glasgow last Friday night about 7 p.m. ish, and by the time I got to Glasgow, you were finishing. So that was back
Uh,
back of 8 in the evening. So
Yeah,
absolutely
something like that.
brilliant,
My
brilliant.
little jump over the line.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't
Saving
know
that.
where that came from.
It came from your soul, from the soul of Yorkshire. And the side thing already, that photograph in the church. Were you sleeping in the church?
Yeah, that was
Probably one
taken
of
by
the,
Tom.
yeah. There's one of these iconic photographs, I think, that the spine will have as a gift, I'm sure, for years to come. There was other ones as well, with people's boots hanging off the end of pews, because a church just adds to that atmosphere, doesn't it? But maybe we'll speak a wee
Yeah.
bit more about that. Um, let's start where we are right now. How are you feeling in the week since the spine?
I it's been really weird, really, really weird. And obviously you know it's gonna batter you because you just never spend that amount of time doing something like that. The first couple of days afterwards, my ankles, I couldn't even bend them. They were like massive and fused. But that
Mm,
started to go down since I've spent a few days lugging about on some bed. The sleep was horrendous. You'd fall asleep. You'd think you'd be absolutely knackered after something like that, but you'd fall
mm.
asleep and then 2 hours later wake up in a panic that you were still at a checkpoint. It's been really weird. And that the last 2 nights and the first 2 nights that's I've been able to sleep through without that happening. But for like 4 nights after the race, I was waking up thinking, shit, what do I need to get ready? Like, where am I? It's
Mm.
really, really odd feeling.
And that I've heard people talk about that sort of thing after a backyard ultra. It's just that days of sleep deprivation and your body must be, it just shows you how deep it goes into your psyche, doesn't it? You
Oh,
know?
absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Um, but that's good to hear that you can see your ankles again. It's always a good sign of
That's always a
recovery.
bonus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now I want to I want to jump the other side of the spine because we'd been talking about you actually getting to Edale to register and then going back home and then going back to the start the next day. And
Mm.
then there was a massive dump of snow, which changed things, doesn't it? So it changed the whole race.
Yeah.
So take us to that, talk us through that, getting registered and the kit check and all that sort of stuff. What was that like?
Um, it was really stressful actually. So the week leading up to race, I'd found the whole process building up to race quite stressful. I'm normally quite chilled out about stuff like that, like you just turn up at Lakeland, you've got all your stuff, but they're so thorough with the kit check. And you can see now after this race this year why they've got to be, because if you'd have had
Mm,
anything that wasn't up to it, there would have been a lot more dropouts on those first 2 days. Um, so yeah, I'd been a bit nervous about the kit check, but I knew I had everything. Went over on the Saturday, watched the start of the sprint, and then did my kit check and went back home. But I were getting a bit worried then about even being able to get to start. But because I was driving from home, it were about, I had to go a bit of a longer way in the end. I had to go out from mine into Sheffield Centre and out on Main Road, which I wouldn't normally go that way to Edale, but all the little side roads were closed. Some of the main roads into Edale were closed. So about an hour and a half it took us to get there on race morning, but it were fine as it was, that all the roads were clear, but it's just one of those extra stresses you don't need on an already stressful event.
Yeah, because there's not like there's a dual carriageway into Edale, you know.
No,
It's and that
little roads.
and that dump of snow that happened, although it impacted, the week of the race, the week before the race, but it had been beautiful weather up until then. And then you're starting in I don't know how many feet of snow, so it's a whole different dynamic. What was your mindset, expectations, hopes going into the race before you started?
Going, like, for my own race going into it.
Yeah.
Nothing really. The only expectation I had of myself, or the only hope I had, was to get to finish. I think with a race like that, you just can't really prepare, because it's the longest I'd done before was like Lakeland 100. What were that, 30 hours? So you just finish before you go into a second night. So all of that was the unknown. So I knew that I was going to have a lot of problem solving to do. But yeah, I just didn't really know what to expect. But that's all part of it, isn't it? That's why we enter these things.
Yeah, you've said the magic number there, 30 hours at Lakeland 100. And then this one, 132 hours. Blows my, honestly, mental, absolutely mental. And I've spoken to people about this, about a number of times, that when we go, I'm going to just go back. Is the Spine an ultra marathon? Is it an ultra
God knows.
God knows what you would call it. But I spoke to people about doing ultra marathons, and if you're out doing 30, 50, 70, 100 miles, I often equate that back to, what did I do that weekend? You know, it's like a Saturday, Sunday. But 132 hours, people go about their day, their week, and I've never known dot watching to be as addictive as it was this year. You know, the social media stuff was off the scale, which is brilliant. I loved it. It was really, really good. And big shout out to Spencer for keeping us up to date with your exploits. He did a great job.
He did. He were doing some tweets. I didn't know he was doing that, actually, until about 3 or 4 days into the race, and I opened Twitter by accident when I got my phone out to do something else. I was like, whoa. Some of those photos were very questionable. I'm not sure I'd have posted them myself, but cheers, Spence.
But he was given, I think he was given a true reflection of what it was like, you know, and we'll speak more about that. And I'm just trying to piece this together in a way that we'll get a flow. And I think I'm going to do this from the essential kit part. We spoke about the kit check. How much of that essential kit did you actually use?
More than I would have hoped to have used. I didn't use my stove, but I probably should have done when I was having my little moment in the toilets in Horton. I probably should have heated some water up and even just drunk some hot water to try and get my body temperature back up. But most of the stuff I did end up actually using. The only thing I didn't use was the handheld GPS. But I had 2 watches, and then obviously you've got your map and compass, you've got your handheld GPS. But because I'd wrecked a lot of the route, I didn't need to use a handheld, but I think a lot of people did, especially in the early days of when we were going over the snow, because there was, all you were doing was following the footprints. You knew you wasn't actually on the Pennine Way, but if you stepped off the footprints that were already there, you ended up to your arse in snow. So you had to just follow the footprints that were already there, whether they were the right route or not.
Well, that's it, because then you're putting your faith in the person at front knows where they're going. So because you can't obviously see the path of the stones, what's there. So had you recce'd it from start to finish? Had you been on the whole lot?
Yeah, I'd been on the whole lot. Yeah. Obviously,
Okay.
I'd done the Challenger South, so I knew that bit to Hawes. And then I'd recce'd the bit between Hawes and Alston just on my own. And then everything north of that was what I did with the girls when me and the girls went on the 3-day weekend. So then I'd done all the north section with them. So
it's always
definitely
just
need it. That's one thing I would say, if anyone's going to do it, to recce, because you don't know what time of day you're going to be. I know it's not easy for everyone to get out there and recce, but when your brains just turn to mashed potato and you don't know what day it is, what time it is, even just little things that you remember from the recce, or the path goes there, or when you're in dark.
And you mentioned 2 watches. Why 2 watches?
Just in case one of them died. So I had 2 Garmins that both had the route loaded onto them. I was carrying a portable charger and my Garmin cable, but it was just in case one of them died. I didn't actually log the route on my watch, so I haven't got the thing that's uploaded to my Strava is from Open Tracking, so I didn't use my watch to record the distance or anything like that. I just used it literally to navigate.
Okay, and were you looking at, you mentioned about following footprints, and you'd be doing that when it was that heavy snow, and then the snow turned to slush and mud and all that sort of stuff. But were you looking at your watches for navigation, or were you confident because you'd done the recce's?
I didn't use my watch for navigation for, up until Hawes, because you were either following the footprints or it was what I knew. I did use it a couple of times, like up around Alston, and that sort of thing, that I want more familiar with. Once the snow would, it's just sometimes you get into a field, and then it's knowing which direction the stile is, because you can't see the stile at the other end of the field. So I used it a couple of times for that. But a lot of it was that muddy. You just followed the boggy after the snow went. You just followed the boggy footprints. So I found navigation easier than, because that was one of the things I was worried about, but that were fine.
And you mentioned map and compass. Did you ever have to get them out and look at them?
No, I didn't get those out.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay, and you mentioned you should have got your stove out in the toilets to heat up some water. Let's talk about the toilets and what took you there. What took you to the toilets?
Oh, that was, so Fountains Fell is, you go up and over Fountains Fell, and then the next climb after that's Pennine before you drop down into Horton. They diverted us round Pennine because it was too dangerous to summit it. So you came down where you walk up if you're going to do the Three Peaks route. But Fountains Fell was actually the worst experience of my life. So I was following the footprints up, which I knew wasn't the Pennine Way, but again, you were just weaving up on a completely random route that someone else had been through. And then as you summited Fountains Fell, that's when the fog came down. It was absolutely chucking it down, and the ground had turned to ice. So you were just into the wind, couldn't really see with your head torch because of the fog just bounces the beam back. So pointed my head torch like down at my feet and were just literally following the footprints. So came down Fountains Fell. I think that's when I started to get cold. Up and down Pennine, and you drop into Horton, and then you've still got, I think it's about 14 miles from Horton to the next checkpoint at Hawes. You see what they'd done? When they'd got to where the normal checkpoint 1 should have been at the scout hut, there was no water there and they couldn't access it, so they had to move the checkpoint. I think it ended up being about 4 miles earlier than it should have been. So you had between checkpoint 1 and Hawes, it was like 60, maybe 63 miles, which is a fair old fair old
Definitely.
stint. Yeah, especially in bad weather as well. So I tried to have a little nap in Malham in a gift shop. I went into a gift shop and said to bloke behind counter, "Do you mind if I just?" He says, "Oh no, go for it." So I killed up in window at gift shop. I thought if anyone were walking past, they were probably like, "What the bloody hell's she doing?" But I didn't really get much sleep there, so I set off for Fountains Fell. But yeah, that were horrendous. Came down into Horton, and I don't even know what time of day this was, so I don't know if anyone were looking at tracker, but I started walking towards. I've been to Horton in Ribblesdale hundreds of times, and I started walking through Horton, and then turned around and went back the way I came, just completely disorientated to where I was. Saw another athlete coming through, and I says, "Oh, am I going right way?" But he didn't speak any English, so I just followed him. Ended up getting to the toilets at Horton, and there were one of the safety teams there, and a guy called Ian. And I just went up to Ian, and by that time, when you're so cold that your whole body's physically shaking, so you're not just your teeth chattering, you're actually shivering your whole body. And I said to Ian, "Oh, I need to go somewhere to warm up." Obviously, what I would have loved Ian to say was, "Oh, just come and sit in car for a bit," but I'd have been straight out at race if that had happened. So the only thing that there is in Horton is the public toilets, but because all the other athletes had been going in there, the floor was soaked. Oh, it was just, but that's literally the only place you've got to shelter. So Ian said to me, "I can't let you set off on the Cam High Road in this state because one, we can't get the safety teams to you if something happens halfway along there, because of the snow drifts." So he said, "You're gonna have to stay here until you've warmed up." So into the women's toilets, and he just said to me, "Am I all right to do what I need to do to help you out?" And I was just like, "Yeah, just help me in." So wet clothes were off. All my layers, all my spare layers that I had went on. He inflated my thermarest mat, put me into my baby bag, put me into my sleeping bag, and tucked me under the baby changing unit in the corner of the toilets. So I just curled up in a ball there, and I was just laying there for, I think I was there 2 hours maybe, just curled up in a ball under the baby change in the toilet. But I was right on the limit of, if I were going to drop out, that is where it had been. Although Ian kept saying to me, "I'm just going to ring HQ and just tell them what's going on." I was like, "Don't tell them I'm dropping out, Ian." "I'm not dropping out. Don't tell them I'm dropping out." He was like, "I'm not. I just need to get you sorted." So
So,
yeah, so that was a bit of a moment. And looking at the tracker, I think that's where a lot of people ended up dropping, because you've still got 13 or 14 miles to get to the checkpoint. You know that you're going over the Cam High Road, which was just ended up being like waist deep drifts. So you knew it were going to take you ages. It wasn't like you thought, "Oh, I've just got 5 miles and maybe an hour to checkpoint." You knew it were going to be hours.
I'm trying my best not to interrupt because I want people to hear your story because it's fascinating so much already. What time is this? Like, is this day one or is this day two?
So this is Monday night, and we'd started Sunday morning.
So we're into day two, right? Okay, but
Evening.
in the evening. But we'd been looking at the stats of when people do drop out, and a lot of it's at checkpoint one. A lot of it is there, the highest percentage. And what you've been describing there about being curled up under that baby changing shelf, what's going through your mind there when you're trying to get a heat? You're obviously cold and you're trying to heat up, but what's in your mind about the race apart from what the bloody hell am I doing here?
Yeah, yeah, not what I envisioned, curling up on a toilet floor. I don't know. I don't remember really thinking anything about the race apart from just got to get warm, got to get sorted, and then I can carry on. But I never once thought that I would drop out there. But I knew that I was close I think if I hadn't have been able to warm up, and Bev, so the next lady, Bev, she'd come into the toilets as well. And she was taking all her wet stuff off when I kind of woke up and peeped out of my sleeping bag. So we had a bit of a chat, and me and her decided to set off on the last leg together. But I think if that hadn't have happened, I'm not sure I would have made that journey.
But these things happen sometimes, I think, for a reason. That you and Bev, who I have no idea who Bev is, but you do, and that you did that together. And that was one of the photographs that Spencer posted as well, when you were there that next day and moving together.
Oh yeah,
you
yeah.
mentioned that Ian took off your wet stuff. Did you get that dry? Or what happens with that?
I just hung it on the toilet door. I was actually hoping that Horton toilets might have had like a hand dryer, but they had sort of this all-in-one thing where you shove your hand under and it puts some like soap on, then the water, then the dryer. So that were bloody useless. And it was so cold in the toilet. So I just had to put my wet it back on again. But do you know what, that Ron Hill jacket? So even though that was absolutely soaked through, everything underneath that was dry. So once I'd managed to warm up again, I could put that jacket back over the top of what I had on.
That quality gear is worth every penny of its investment.
Oh, absolutely is, yeah. Because I think a lot of people's waterproofs, see, a lot of people, if they were planning to move a little bit faster, they went for sort of a lightweight waterproof jacket, which is fine if you're trying to save weight in your kit. But I'm sure that's what ended a lot of people's races, because you needed a really good, almost a walking, like a really thick walking coat for that to be able to keep warm. And I'm sure a lot of people that had packed like a lightweight shower jacket, if that would have just failed in those conditions, you couldn't have kept warm.
Yeah. Did you get warm? Did you feel your core get warmer?
I didn't really get warm, because what had happened, I was in my bivvy and then in my sleeping bag, but the sleeping bag had got wet, because I'd spent half of the time falling on my ass coming down Fountains Fell, and that was at the bottom of my pack on my back. So every time I fell and sat on it, obviously it were getting more and more wet. So the sleeping bag ended up being damp. So I didn't really, I curled up, but I didn't really get sort of warm, because you soaked through, aren't you?
Yeah, but that's my thing. That's the thing that's in my head just now, Mel. The challenge of being and moving in the conditions without heating your body. When did you get a heat in your body across the week, or did you?
No, not. What? When did I warm up?
Yeah.
Well, what happened, so when Bev came in, and she just said, get all your layers on and we'll just start hiking, because the only way you're going to get warm is to try and generate body heat. And if we could keep dry and keep walking, so we put his ice spikes on, put all the layers on that we had, and we just set off fast hiking up the Cam High Road. Once we've been going about even 10 minutes, because you come out of Horton and it's straight uphill. We were warm enough then. She had a really, really good jacket on, which I loved. And as soon as we were hiking, we managed to obviously generate body heat. But I think what it was up until then, you're coming down Fountains Fell, and then you've got a little up, and then you're coming down off Pen again, but you're not moving fast enough to generate body heat. Because it were just so icy then that you couldn't jog down, even though it were downhill. You couldn't jog down, because so that ended up being the problem, that you were moving too slow to generate any heat. Weird. Horrible.
I'm smiling because even in the conditions, you're admiring Bev's jacket. I love that.
Yeah, it were lovely.
Now you're talking about generating heat, and we're talking about walking, maybe jogging. It's probably an appropriate time to talk about what was on your feet. What shoes did you wear?
I wore the Innovate trail talons, so I had 2 pairs of those. I changed them at Hawes, actually. So they were a full size bigger than what I had. And I had the deck shell socks on. So I'd started in a liner sock and the deck shells. And then after Hawes, I didn't wear a liner sock and I just wore the deck shells on their own then for the rest of the race.
Have these shoes got a big lug on them for grip?
Yeah. Yeah, really big
yeah.
lug for grip. And then I had the micro spikes on as well for some of it.
Hell, man. Deck shells, how were your feet across the week?
Do you know what? I'm going to come out with a statement now. Not one blister. Got to the end, took my socks off. My ankles were huge, so there was a lot more foot than there was when I first started, a lot more surface area, but I didn't have one blister the whole week. Not one.
Wow.
Didn't have to put any tape on, didn't have to put anything. Every checkpoint, socks off. That squirrel's nut butter. Have you heard of that?
Yeah.
Covered my feet in that. Pair of deck shell socks, just on their own, no liner sock. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Note.
I can feel the searching of squirrels, nut butter, and deck shell as we speak. I know that's going to be one of the things, because people will be inspired. If it works for you, it might work for them. No guarantee, because everybody's different.
No.
But there's also, we should also give Flexitol a plug at this point.
Yeah, Flexitol.
Flexitol as well. We should do that as well. So that was your shoes. And then people talk about the spine race. Okay. And I know for the people up the front, I know that they're running hard. What was your experience of walking, hiking, running, jogging? Was it mostly hiking we're talking about?
Yeah, mostly hiking. The weird thing was, I ran most of Hadrian's Wall, which is what, 200 mile in, and I ran a lot of over the Cheviots at the end, which is just baffling, really, that you can still run that far into something like that.
Stephen talks a lot. He spoke to me a lot about that draw of the finish line. You're over 200 miles. You've never been to this place before in your head, or your body's never been pushed to that limit before. But it's that maybe that draw of the finish line, because in that last couple of days, you were the tracker gives you an estimated time of arrival, but you were smashing that. You were taking like sometimes hours off of that. So you were obviously moving well. So was there a shift in your head or something after day 4 or 5?
Absolutely no idea, because my right shin was absolutely battered. So that started hurting day 4, maybe day 4, Thursday, when I came off Hadrian's Wall and you start going through more bog. I don't know what day that was. All blurs into one. But yeah, I was having a real problem with my shin, and I think that was, I've never had a problem there before, but I think it was pulling that leg out of, so for the first few days, you're pulling it out of the snow and the snow drifts. And then later on in the week, you were like stepping with your left foot and then yanking your back foot out of the bog, and just all down the front of my shin was really painful by the last day. So, but I think it's, one, adrenaline, and two, that you know you're going to do it, because there's absolutely no way I should have been able to run that last bit. You just shouldn't be able to do it. I don't think so. Yeah, definitely adrenaline, and just you know that the finish is coming.
I wasn't sure if I was going to ask this question, but I'm going to ask it right now, or when I was going to ask it. Was there ever a moment of doubt in your head that you were going to finish?
Not in my head, no. I think even from when I started, the mind was willing to finish, and I always knew in my head that if everything went all right, barring any injury or barring any falls or barring shriveling up in a toilet, that I could always picture the finish in my head, which I think mentally is what you need for something like that.
Yeah, definitely. Most definitely. But just thinking, you can never prepare for what the week's going to throw at you. Do you know what I
No.
mean? And getting that, I'm not going to call it a setback. Getting that challenge early doors that you described about Ian and Horton and going into the toilet and being in there and that losing that body temperature and getting that back up. That could have been enough for a lot of people to think, this is not for me. But I think having that mindset of going in with, I'm going to finish unless something happens that medically maybe I can't. But I'm just wondering if, because for a lot of people, we see a lot. There was a brilliant video of a guy, Tim, I think his name was, who finished the spine at his third attempt. The first two, the first one, I think he said he felt a bit. The event got to him in his head, maybe. The second one he had to pull out because of medical reasons, so there's nothing you can do about that. And then he finished it this year, which is so obviously it gets under your skin. So I'm absolutely delighted you finished it the first time, Mel.
Me too. Me too.
The public toilets. They are public toilets. Did any members of the public come in when all these runners were lying in all sorts of states?
No, luckily, the time that I was there was, I think I ended up getting to the horse checkpoint at 3:30 in the morning. So it was probably 10, maybe 10 p.m. 1, 2, it might even been before that. Yeah, so it had been Monday evening when I was in the toilet. So luckily, no, people might have come in while I was curled up, but I didn't even peep out of my sleeping bag. I was just in a little cocoon.
Yeah. And that also takes us to sleep. Before, and I know it changes on the day or on the week. Did you have an idea or a plan to sleep before you started the race about places that you would pick up or you would lie down? Or was it a case of you're going to take it when you can?
Yeah, I wasn't really sure. I ended up miles behind. So when I was south, I think I'd finished maybe between 4 and 6 Monday afternoon. So I thought adding some time onto that, I should get to Hawes 10 p.m., 10, 11 p.m. Obviously, that all just went to pot with the conditions. So I ended up getting to Hawes at it was actually 3:33 Tuesday morning by the time I rolled into Hawes. So I was already miles behind what I thought should have been my first time to sleep. So yeah, it just all went to pot after that. There were no real plan. It would just to try and keep moving and then sleep at the checkpoints if you can. But again, they're dead noisy. I think a lot of people, especially Sarah, she really struggled with the checkpoints because of how busy and how noisy they were. In the first few days, if the weather hadn't have been as bad as it was, I would have probably slept on the trail somewhere before we'd got to Hawes. But obviously you can't just lie down in the snow because it wouldn't have been the most comfortable or warm. So yeah, my first what I probably would have done, knowing what the conditions were like, is try to sleep at Hebden. But I just thought that would have been if I'd have been moving better, that would have been too soon for me personally on sort of sleeping on the first day. But knowing how long that second section would have been, yeah, I probably should have slept at Hebden.
This is it though. You've got to make these decisions on the day, and when they're moving checkpoints as well, and the distance is becoming greater between checkpoints, this is and you're right, the conditions didn't lend themselves to sleeping outside, because we've seen people hanging out of phone boxes and wherever they can get a bit of shelter. Oh man, there'll be people listening to this and be going, there's no way I would do that. But equally, there'll be people going, yeah, this is what I want. Give me some of that.
I'm up for that.
You mentioned Sarah. We should say Sarah Perry, previous guest, friend of the show. Sarah finished in 115 hours, so massive well done to Sarah. Brilliant.
Yeah, absolute. She did so well.
Yeah, the women had a brilliant year, didn't they?
Yeah, they sure did. And it were just brilliant. Every time I got to a checkpoint, that was first thing we asked when I walked in. How are girls doing? How are girls doing? Just finding out, hoping that they're still moving. Obviously, Hannah's race didn't work out how she'd planned, but everybody else managed to keep moving. And I think with the women, all of them seem to spend quite a lot of time on their own, whether that were by choice or I purposely tried to spend more time on my own. You do end up sort of toing and froing with the same sort of few people. Obviously, Martin, I spent quite a lot of time. I went past and he went past and I went past. He slept a lot more than me and then ended up catching up again. But yeah, I tried to spend up most of the race just on my own, which is what I wanted to do.
Yeah. And a couple of things. You mentioned about you got in the Hawes at 3:33. Is that after the race, you know that, or did you know that at the time?
I didn't know that at the time. I had no idea. I only found out that because my friend Kirsty, who was volunteering there, she messaged me 2 days ago and said she woke up at 3:33. She was off shift, so she was upstairs in bed, and she said she woke up at 3:33, looked at the tracker, and I'd just arrived at Hawes, so I had no idea
Brilliant.
what time it actually was. But yeah, I only found that out 2 days ago,
I'm
so I
just
was already
thinking.
way behind.
Yeah, I'm just thinking though to remember that detail at that time, but it was afterward you found it out. Okay, and of course you've volunteered at Hawes yourself. You've been there.
Yeah. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
there last January, so it was great. I knew a few people, the same people had volunteered the year I was there, and they'd gone back again. So it was great to see some of them when I got to Hawes. So I was there. I ended up being there absolutely ages because I was bloody gassing too much as usual. Instead of just getting on with sorting my kit out, I was like, "Oh, hiya, are you all right?" I'm like, "Oh, just get on with it, Sykes. Come on."
Um, Now a couple of things. I'm maybe going to do this now. I was going to do it maybe later on, but let's do it now because we're talking about it. Let's say a wee bit about um, the race team and the volunteers. I know I've seen a lot of stuff on Blue Sky. First time Blue Sky has maybe been mentioned on the Young Hearts Run Free podcast. But Dr. Nikki Ligo plays a massive part in the organisation of the volunteers for the spine race, and Nikki was putting out loads of stuff. Do you want to say a wee bit? And I'm just thinking about the logistics, even putting in diversions, and then Ian from the safety team helping you and keeping you safe. Do you want to say a wee bit about the spine team and also the volunteers? Do you want to say a bit about that?
I think a lot of the spine volunteers go back every single year because they just love it so much. And the good thing about the volunteers is they have seen athletes in varying states of mess. And they're all so good. So when you turn up at a checkpoint and you just blubbering away, saying, "Oh, I don't know if I can continue," instead of them going, "Oh, it's all right. Oh, it's all right." Like they're just like, "Right, let's get you something to eat." Like they're all just on it. So none of them ever falter and start feeling sorry for you. They know that that's what people are going through. They know that that's what you've signed up for, and they just get you sorted, get you something to eat. Like they don't pester you, they'll just come over. What do you want to do here? Do you want to sleep? And they're just, it's so organized and they're so on it with no judgment. Like with Ian, like what I expected Ian when I came into the toilets to go, oh gosh, oh, it's all right, like you need it. And he was just like, right, get yourself sorted, curl up there, I'll come back in 2 hours and see how you're doing. And that's what you need. You don't need someone, you
Mm.
don't want somebody. You feel like you want somebody to feel sorry for you and give you a hug and tell you it's all right, but you don't. You need someone to sort you out and send you on your way again because you don't want to drop out, and you don't want to be mollycoddled. You just need a little bit of a shove to get going again. And that's what they do when you're in the checkpoints. Obviously, I could have
Mm.
sat there all day gassing because that's what I do. And then every so often they'd be like, "Mel, like, any chance of you leaving anytime soon?" I'm like, oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because that cuddle and a hug that can be nice, but it can also tip you into that I'll just stay here,
Yeah,
and so yeah, it's that tough tough love, but done with kindness. Yeah, I totally get that. And we
And
should do
that's why I think they have the same volunteers back most of the time,
but they get
because
it. Yeah.
yeah, they get it. Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Low points. Let's talk about if there was a lowest point for you. Do you want to describe that?
So low. It's weird because there was a lot of low points in the race, but like it was all part of it. So I
Mhm.
don't see it as a bad thing. It's just like on, I think it was day 3 or 4, and I set off from Dufton to go up Crossfell, and for some reason I started crying going up the ascent of Crossfell, and I cried all the way until I got to Alston checkpoint. But I wasn't upset and I wasn't sad. I think it was just an emotion, probably overtiredness,
Mm.
and just the emotion of doing the event and going up Crossfell. Um, but it still wasn't a low point, even though I was crying. It wasn't a low point because I hit the summit of Crossfell at 4 p.m. There was an amazing sunset. I had a really nice cloud inversion on the way up. I was doing what I loved to be doing. I was in an event that I've always wanted to do, so I wasn't crying because I were upset. I just don't know why. I just couldn't stop. Which it were really weird. There were a couple of points where it was just getting a little bit tedious. There was a long downhill through a forest before you get to Burness, and that, like on a forest, like a fire track.
Mhm.
And that was, I was sleepwalking there, and I was trying to sing to myself to keep myself awake, wobbling all over, and it just seemed my shin were killing. It just seemed to go on for ages, and you're getting closer to the finish. So that was I don't know. Yeah, it's hard because I don't see it as a low point because it's part of the race, but it was a not so enjoyable bit.
Not so I love that. But maybe that's down to your mental preparedness and your built-in resilience that you've got. Maybe that is,
Yeah,
but it's also a good way to frame it. It's part of what's happening.
yeah.
So yeah. Sleep keeps coming back into my mind. Have you any idea how much sleep you actually had across the week?
No, a couple of times. So when I got into some of the checkpoints, I'd always set my alarm for 3 hours when I went up and got into bed. But maybe an hour and a half was the most I had in any one chunk in any of the checkpoints. And I just woke up and thought, right, that's obviously what I'm having. There's no point laying here for another hour.
Yeah.
So I just get up and crack on again. So, but yeah, I'm not really, not a lot would be
Okay.
the roundup. Yeah, not a
Okay.
lot at all.
That's cool. And a wee curious question from me as well. What's in that pack that's on your chest in the front? What's in there?
Snacks, snacks, snacks
Mm.
on my phone.
So is that what
So
you need? I was talking about this. Is that what you need like today? You got the backpack obviously, but you don't want to be in and about that all the time. So that's what you're needing just to move forward. Yeah.
yeah, so I had a little sandwich bag in my drop bag. I had a sandwich bag with enough food that I thought that I ended up with way too much food, but what I'd planned to get me from one checkpoint to another. So at every checkpoint, took out the plastic bag that was in my little kangaroo pouch, put the next one in, and then set off with that. So I had like my phone, my charging pack, and the little food parcel in that little front pocket, just so it were easier access and fettling around in your pack.
Yeah. Kangaroo pouch. That's a perfect description, actually, isn't it?
Yeah,
What
yeah.
it is. Brilliant. And you mentioned Alston, which leads on. Alston lasagna. Is it what it's built up to be?
Oh, it were amazing.
I'm
It were
so happy
amazing.
about that.
Yeah, it was so good. And do you know what? It's little things like that that are the quite iconic part of that race. So Hornisted Farm, Rasta Ralph, the Lasagne. So it makes it a little bit easier to tick off in your head each portion of the race, because I thought, right, Lasagne's next. So when I was crying going up Crossfell, oh, obviously there's Greg's Hut before that, John Bamber making his noodles. So you drop down to Greg's Hut. And then I knew the next point after that was Alston, but it all makes it ticking off, because I think if you think of the race as one thing, it's just too much. You just can't compute finishing that. Whereas, like right now, I need to get to the noodles at Greg's Hut. Right, now I need to get to the lasagna. Now I need to get to the. So you just ticking off each section. But the lasagna were great. So 4 portions. I arrived there, 4 portions of that. Went to bed. Managed, I think, an hour and a half there until I was in a room on my own at Alston, actually. And then after an hour and a half, Martin arrived, started his snoring. Thanks, Martin. So I got up as Martin got into bed and started snoring, and I went downstairs and got ready to carry on then.
So I've got 3 questions about Alston that you've just... With the lasagna, is it just lasagna, or do you get chips or garlic bread, anything like that?
No, there were no chips or garlic bread. No, there was lasagna, various different lasagnas. So they had a gluten-free one and they had a veggie one. So there was different lasagnas, and there was some other food as well, but I don't think anybody really goes for that.
Okay, yeah, Alston lasagna is Alston lasagna. 4 portions is a good... That's a good helping. I don't think that's the record. The record's something like in double digits. Somebody.
Oh yeah, somebody smashed it. I think somebody's at 12, 13,
Yeah.
somebody's up to.
In Alston, you mentioned there about having the room to yourself for a bit. Is it warm? Is it cozy?
It's just a YHA, so there was the bunk beds. So I was on the bottom bunk bed. You need to take your sleeping bag up. And so it's like those white clean mattresses, sticky mattresses. So you go up with your sleeping bag. So I had my sleeping bag that was in my pack, and then I had another sleeping bag in my drop bag, which was what someone had said to do, so that you're not faffing about getting the one out of your pack at the checkpoints. So I took my sleeping bag up that was in my drop bag, and yeah, they were pretty quiet. I'm a really light sleeper normally, but I think you're just that knackered. You shut your eyes and you're out like a light. You don't sleep well, but you get enough to be able to get up and carry on again.
Okay. And then you mentioned Martin a couple of times. I want to speak about Martin. Martin Morrison is a very good friend of the show. Listening to the show, we've met him and his wife Fiona a few times. He's been in Perth helping out with the Anglo-Celtic Plate. Met him at the Lakes a couple of times. He's run and he's done the 50, he's done the 100. So, and he was taking on the spine. And for a good portion, certainly the last few days, dot watching, as you've already described, we've seen you and Martin were moving around each other. But do you want to say a wee bit about Martin? And well done to Martin for finishing as well. Do you want to say a wee bit about...
well done to Martin. He were, and I think he had fast hiked most of it. So it just shows the different tactics. So the weird thing was, me and Martin stood next to each other chatting on the start line. So we were together or thereabouts nearly the whole race. So I got to Hebden Bridge and he was there. He had a 3-hour sleep at Hebden Bridge and I carried on. Martin then appeared as me and Bev came out of the toilets at Horton. He was just coming into Horton, so we did the Cam High Road together. So there was a lot of the race where we were just back and forward, going on Hadrian's Wall. He appeared. We ended up in the same room at Alston. We both ended up sleeping in the church at Burness together, and then finished more or less the same time. So yeah, great guy. We had some nice chats. He was very much like me, where he wanted to complete a lot of it on his own. So when we came across each other, we had a bit of a chat. Are you all right? Yeah, how are you doing? He was sleeping more than I was sleeping, but then moving quicker between when he was sleeping. But yeah, great guy. And then we both knew that we wanted to spend the race like a lot of the race more or less on his own. So we just split up and then ended up seeing it. But yeah, and nearly every checkpoint I saw Martin.
Yeah, but that's what happens though. You meet people, but well, it's long enough where you can have time on your own, but you can also have these little meetups and conversations with people. And I'm sure there were other people. You've already mentioned Bev and Martin. Was there anybody else that you were chumming along the way at different points?
Just them really. There was two lads and I can't remember the names. Oh, I think one was called James. So we were to and fro with them a little bit as well. But only them really. That I
Okay.
ended up spending more time with.
It's crazy to think 268 miles, isn't it? And you're doing that because we're watching these dots where there was quite a lot of dropouts as well. Oh, it's so fascinating, so fascinating. You mentioned earlier that you put your phone on and you saw Twitter and you saw what Spencer had been up to. Were you aware of what was happening outside of the race? Sort of social media wise?
No, no,
No.
no, not at all. No, I had obviously I'd set up that WhatsApp group just to put some pictures in that Spencer was
Hmm.
taken out of, but I didn't really read any of them WhatsApp messages. Didn't really go on my social media. Mainly because for a lot of the time I had 3 pair of gloves on, so you just couldn't get to your phone to start faffing about. And then once you got to a checkpoint, like I didn't really get my phone out and start scrolling, because you just end up in a hole then, don't you?
Yeah,
Just needed
yeah.
to get something to eat and get to sleep and carry on. So no, I hadn't really looked.
Okay, that's cool.
I hadn't really looked. It didn't like look at the tracker or anything like that,
Hmm.
and how they were doing. But yeah, no, they were nice.
I asked previous I should say winter spine winner, Debbie Martin Kinsani, if she'd ask you
Ah,
a question. And the question that Debbie came back with, where did you get the best cup of tea?
the best cup of tea I got was what Nikki made me when I finished. So when I went
Ah,
into the hall at the end, actually, she'd made it for herself. So she came and sat next to me for a chat, and she'd made herself a cup of tea. And I looked down and I said, "Oh, that looks a good brew, Nikki." And she went, "Oh, do you want it?" So yeah,
brilliant.
so she had actually made it for herself, and then she donated it to me and made herself another one. So that was the best cup of tea that I had.
And that just sums up the spine team perfectly, doesn't it? I've made this for myself, but you can
Yes.
have it. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that because I also know that tea's important. There's
Oh
cups of
yeah.
tea and then there's cups of tea. So
Mm.
brilliant, cool. And you mentioned your kangaroo pouch and the food bag that was in there. What were you using? What was in your food bags that you'd made up?
So there was mashed potato, the instant mashed potato packets. So I think I bought about 10 of those and I only ate 2 in the end, one at Montane and I can't remember where the other one was. I did have some gels. I don't normally go with gels, but I did have a couple of gels. They were the Protein Rebel maple
Mm,
gels. So Laura Swanton Rouvlin, she'd given me one of those when we went on as recce weekend. Because I'm a bit funny with gels because they can do dodgy stuff to your guts, can't they?
hmm.
So she gave me one of those and it worked really well. So I had a couple of those in there. Haribo flapjacks, the usual
Mm.
sugary stuff.
Would you recommend the mashed potato?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So easy to make. So you just put
Mm,
one of those packets into my little metal cup that had 200 ml of water and absolutely brilliant. The cheesy one, cheesy mash. I think it's called
mm.
Ida Huns or something. But yeah, that one great.
Brilliant.
It's
I
actually
keep.
pretty good.
I shall sample it. should maybe, if
I've
you can
got
send it,
loads.
if you can send the link, you'll be eating it until the summertime. If you can send the link, then we can add that into the show notes. We can do that, and
Yeah.
other people can try it for themselves. Because people are always looking for something nutrition wise. And I'm assuming there's salts. There'll be salt in that as well. I'm thinking, but it's good to try again. Go and try it for yourself and see if it works
Mhm.
for you. Even something different, just to change the taste of things over the course of a long event can be brilliant. What about water? Now that's the thing. Water, because it's cold and you're not moving as quick as you would to run. Was hydration on your mind, or did that all work out okay?
That all worked out okay. So every checkpoint I left with both my bottles full with tailwind. So I had the berry tailwind in. And you know what I did? I don't think I refilled my bottles between checkpoints on any day.
Mm,
No, I didn't. Yeah, so I filled them up, left the checkpoints with them full, but then never had to refill them between the checkpoints, which seems weird, doesn't it?
it does, given the distance,
Yeah,
But then
yeah.
maybe the conditions, and you weren't maybe generating loads of sweat as well to be doing that. But as long as you never felt dehydrated, which is good.
No, I
Um,
didn't. No, not at all. But like if you think about the section from Langdon Beck, so there's a cafe in Dufton, so I'd had a coffee there, and a can of pop, and then you get to Greg's Hut, and they give you a cup of tea. So even though I didn't fill my bottles, I was getting fluids
yeah.
between the checkpoints at various different spots. Yeah.
What was the worst bit of weather you came across?
The worst bit of weather was from after Montane, over Fountains Fell and down Pennine that were just sheet ice and you were moving so slow. And then the Cam High Road. So I think that Cam High Road normally would, when I've done the summer race, 5 hours, I think it sort of takes. And it took Bev and Martin, I think 8.5 on race
Wow.
day. Just so the wind, the rain, it were dark, it were foggy, the snow drifts, it were really, really, really tough going. But now I look back on it, it wasn't at the time, it were horrendous, but it was enjoyably tough. I think I wouldn't
Mm,
have wanted to do that section on my own. I'd be interested to see what Martin thought about that section as well, because
yeah.
yeah, we were all just death marching on there.
I remember reading a book. I've read a number of Scott Jurek's books, and one of the things that he said, he was talking about mantras, and he was saying that when it gets really tough and when it's hellish, one of his mantras was, "This is what I signed up for." But maybe you weren't thinking that at that point in the week when
Yeah.
what you've just described, you know. Uh, yeah, it's quite fascinating. The human resilience and how we can move through these things. I absolutely love it. Um,
Mhm.
Biggest learning for the spine?
With regards to the race or just in general?
Oh, let's go with the race first.
Oh, um, biggest learnings from the race was, if I was to do it again, be a lot more efficient in the checkpoints. Stop talking so much. I think most people would probably say, stop yapping, get on with it, be a bit more efficient in the checkpoints. But if you're doing it just to complete it and get to the end, then that's fine, because that's all part of the experience of it, isn't it? Meeting people and
Hmm.
having a chat. And biggest learn,
Biggest Mel Sykes learning.
I
What have you
think
learned
that
about yourself?
I'm tough.
Yeah.
That I can grit it out and carry on. Yeah, that I, that I can grit it out and carry on. And even when you think that you're in a bad spot, you just wait a few hours and it comes back round again. Like everything comes back round. So on some of the really, really bad bits, you just have to wait them out. Just ride it out and the good thing will come back.
Yeah, this too shall pass. Yeah, I like that.
This too shall
Brilliant.
pass. Yeah, that's what it
And
is.
I've noticed a few times that tattoo on your arm, the brain
On my
tattoo.
brain, yeah.
Yeah, that was in focus. You wouldn't maybe be aware of that, but that was in focus for the page on the BBC website about this girl from Yorkshire who's had a brain operation. She's away doing this run. Does that even
Yeah,
come into your psyche at all? Is that something that it's happened, you've moved on, you're now who you are now?
yeah, that's obviously hopefully touch wood, that's been recovered from, and this is the next chapter. I didn't realise actually, so I'd done an interview with Leeds Hospital about they wanted to do a little write-up about me recovering from the surgery and going into the spine, but I didn't realise that had come out because the BBC put that out, but the race had already started then, so I didn't even realise that had gone out after the race, which and then it was when I got to one of the checkpoints, and I think it was Hawes, and someone said to me, "Oh, this article's come out on the BBC," and I was like, "Oh wow." But yeah, I didn't know that they'd put that out. I think Leeds Hospital put it out as a media, like a press release, and then
Yeah.
it's just whoever picks it up then. But I didn't expect the BBC. I thought like the local paper might pick it up, but I didn't expect it to be on BBC. So that was great.
Yeah, it's good exposure. And I think a lot of the comments that I've seen have been around people who themselves or they know people who have the Chiari malformation, and it gives them
Mm.
hope as well. It's being inspiring is what the Yorkshire Correspondent does. There was also lots of comments about do it for Yorkshire, wasn't there? There was a lot of that. If you've looked back, have you had a chance to look back at
I
messages?
know you did it. Yeah, I had a look. Yeah, well, I've been away. I've been having a look through the tracker. There's some real. Oh, it really chokes you up. There's some from. It just says, "Oh, we think you're Brill, Mel," and then it's like Isabel 3 and Eleanor
Mm,
5, and I just think, oh gosh, so that they've obviously got their parent to put the little comment on. So
mm.
yeah, and they're the sort of people that you want, like young girls like that. They're the ones that you want to see. You want them to see somebody, especially a woman, doing something like this and think, oh gosh, maybe I could get into something like that.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned in there was a wee video you were part of. I don't know what day it was, but the Spine official video, they put a clip of you out, and you mentioned there about women and going out and doing stuff. Don't wait for tomorrow, sort of stuff. Just go and crack on and get it done. And it is
Mm.
inspirational. When you see messages like that, it's brilliant. I also seen a message. Was it from the toilet attendant? There was a message from a toilet attendant that I don't know if that was earlier on, but just what people put in and that how they describe themselves is quite brilliant. And
Yeah.
it must be. Do you feel quite emotional looking at all that afterwards?
Oh yeah, well, yeah. I when I finished it took me a couple of days to read them, so they give you finish, but I couldn't read them for a few days. So I read them when I got on holiday. I was having a little bit of a read through. But gosh, yeah, the amount of people that were following the race, and even people thinking to go on and leave a comment, like even when I was mid race and people were putting stuff on, like, oh, you've done day 3, and you just think, oh gosh, we're so like the following year, and yeah, it was just so brilliant knowing that there were people willing you on all the time.
Yeah, definitely. It's a amazing endeavor, and I think I actually got invested in other people too because you go on that and then you read their story and they've got to say the spine official social media is really really good. We're giving you wee insights to people's stories and what they're doing it for and their reason for doing stuff. And then you go on and you check where they are on the track, and you leave them a message, and then you browse what the other messages are, and you're like, oh my God, it's just so good. It's absolutely amazing. Would you do it again?
Do you know what? I've been wondering about this for the last couple of days. When I first finished, I said that I wouldn't do it again because that race for me, I had such a good, bad experience. Like, I got the real gritty weather the first few days, then got the better weather, managed to run, spent the time in checkpoints, hit Crossfell in daylight. All that day on Hadrian's Wall were just so good. I don't think if I went back and it wasn't as good experience, like I had the best experience that I wanted and got everything out of that race that I wanted at that time. If I went back again, say trained again, put yourself through that, maybe you finish 5 hours faster, but what does that really mean? Because if the experience isn't as good, all right, you finished it faster, but the conditions are different. And it's not about the time, is it, on something like that? It's about the whole race experience, and I had such a good race experience and loved every second of it that I won't want to go back and then it not be as good.
Yeah, I get that. I get that. I'm even looking at previous course or the course records and previous course records. The conditions are different, aren't they? So
yeah.
I don't think there'll be we get 2 years where it's ever the same. It's even been spoken about that this year was the most hellish ever. Would you agree?
Oh, I can imagine. Yeah, I can imagine. Obviously, I've not done it previous years to be able to compare. But I think just the rate of dropouts and the conditions those first 2 days definitely, definitely made it challenging.
When did the spine first come on your radar?
Well, for me, it's been on my radar quite a while, because part of the Pennine Way just passes just up where I live. So I've been up to watch the race come through 7 years. Every January I've gone up, but it's always one of those like, oh, else I want into the longer distance running then. So you just think, oh, look at them crazy bastards. I'd never do out like that. But I think the niggling thought's always there, but you just don't think that you're capable of it yourself.
And
And
well,
then,
you
yeah.
proved that wrong, haven't you? And
Yeah, yeah.
did the Lakeland 100 play a big part in the belief for the spine?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So that was my thing with recovering from the up this year. The first one was the Pennine Barrier, one of the GB Ultras ones that I did in May. And I thought, right, if I can do that, then I can do Lakeland. And then once I managed to complete Lakeland, I thought, do you know what? I think I'll be able to do the spine. And then it's just a case of getting through the training. Even to get through the training uninjured for something like the spine is just mega.
Yeah. On that, how did you rock up at the start line? How were you feeling physically?
All right, yeah, I'd been poorly so I didn't run for just over 2 weeks, I think, before the start of the spine because I'd been poorly. I had a bit of a virus, which I think a lot of people had really, at just that time of year. So, and I thought I'd done enough hiking and distance wise to be able to get through. I just wasn't sure how this virus would affect me because as soon as you start doing anything like that, any little niggle or anything, it's gonna pull it out from the depths, isn't it? So I lost my voice on on that little video where I'm just like croaky voice. I lost my voice on day 2, and that didn't come back until maybe 2 days ago. But yeah, I think I probably wasn't 100% well, as in virus wise, but I had no injuries, so.
Do you think that 2 weeks where you didn't run before, Did that actually play in your favour physically on the race?
You're never going to know, I don't think, are you?
Ah,
You're never going to know, no, because I think for something like the spine, all the training's done, even in like the build up to the Lakeland. So a lot of hiking, a lot of getting out there, just being out on your feet. So I wasn't worried in those 2 weeks that fitness wise we're going to go, because I just don't think that matters. It's what you've been doing over the year leading up to it, isn't it?
yeah, but it's that
Um,
maybe it's that enforced rest as well. It's giving your legs a chance to be fresh, or as fresh
yep,
as they can be. You know.
yeah, yeah.
I've written down here lockets. We had a conversation because you'd been reading race reports and blogs and stuff before when you were in that 2 week period of not running. And
Mhm.
somebody had mentioned about using lockets for the voice and for the throat. Did you heed that advice?
I did. Yeah, I had that was in my little pouch at the front as well. I always had a packet of lockets in there.
Right.
I told my mum that I'd read about having a packet of lockets with you on the race. Obviously, she bought me 5 packets. Bless her. So I always had a packet of lockets, and every so often just put one of those in. I think it definitely helped with the cold as well. The first 2 days,
Hmm.
breathing in the really cold air. So that's one thing I would definitely, if anybody's thinking of doing the spine, or any of the long distance races actually, a packet of, especially in cold weather, a packet of lockets. Yeah, fantastic.
Top tip. Top
Top
tip.
tip.
Not saying that Wendy Sykes will buy you 5 packets, but it's a top tip from Mel Sykes.
Yeah.
No, I was just one of my questions was about what would you say? You've just maybe answered part of it. What would you say to somebody even thinking about doing the spine? What would you say to them?
I would say do it. Obviously. I
Hmm.
think there's enough of the longer distance races, there's enough other races to be able to build up to something like that. The thing with the spine is just the lack of aid stations and the lack of crew. So long days out on your own, making sure that you carry everything, and the pack's quite heavy to carry. Um, so making sure that you're used to carrying that amount of weight, because I know Laura, her race had ended the last couple of years because her back went because of the pack. So
Hmm.
getting used to that. But yeah, just start with the sprint, and build up. That's obviously the other distances. What would have been my ideal would probably have been to do the Challenger North before I did the full spine. I think that would have been the more sensible way to do the most sensible way to do it, because then it's going past those 2 nights and having that
Hmm.
experience. But I just, with what had happened with the old brain leak, I just wanted to go in and make sure I could do the spine, because you just don't know how recovery is going to be after that, do you? So
Hmm.
yeah, I would have built up using the smaller distances rather than going straight in for the main race. But
Yeah. So just there's loads of information now, I think, as well about the spine and the
so
recce's
much.
and people listening to this. You've given a lot of information here as well. So there's no there's no reason not to find out about stuff, you know.
Oh
But
no, yeah,
I
there's
think
plenty of stuff out there.
I think what you're saying though, it's about getting your foot on the route. I think that's what I mentioned. The guy earlier on, the guy Tim that finished it. He is a spine finisher. He's done it where
Yep,
he hadn't completed the 2 years before, but he is now. And he said in his, it was almost like, when football matches finish and want to speak to the captain or the manager just as it's finished. Imagine putting a camera in somebody's face at that point. And that's what they did with that guy. And they're asking him all these questions. And what he was saying, though, one thing that he said had happened was the recce's. And it's like getting a foot on the route and getting the training done. And that's just what you've described. And there are other
yeah,
events that will give you that build up in distance before you go for 268. Well,
yeah.
That is mental. It is
I know.
268 miles. Honestly, brilliant. Can I take you back last week to Burness, 8:30 Friday morning? That's when you arrived at Burness.
Oh, right.
So yeah, I'm just checking. I've got it up in front of me. What were you thinking there? You know were you hoping to finish on that day now? Because it's Friday morning, 8:30.
Do you know what? I didn't know. I didn't have a clue what time of day or what day it was by then. The section before that, so I'd got to Bellingham checkpoint, and that checkpoint is just the worst of the whole race. So you're in, there's like a small area with a load of seats in, and then next to that there's a wooden hall that you sleep on the floor of, but there's just a door that's opening every 2 minutes between where you're sleeping and where everybody's coming in to get ready. So it's really noisy, it's really cold. So I'd gone into Bellingham, gone into the hall to try and sleep, thinking that I might have 3 or 4 hours, and ended up, I don't know. I need to have a look back at the times really, and see how long I were there. So I got up and left Bellingham then, must have been early hours in the morning, I think, to do the section over to Burness. And there's a really long descent down a fire track that seems to just go on for hours and hours down into Burness. So I was going down there, falling asleep on my feet. I had to ring HQ at one time to make sure I was going the right way. I had the route on my watch and I could see the line and I knew I was on the right route. But I rung HQ and just said, "Can you just tell me if I'm going right way?" And she was like, "Yeah, just keep going, you're on." But I just no idea what were going on there. Got to Burness. So it was 8:30 in the morning when I got to
Yep.
Burness, was it?
Yeah.
Ah, right. So then you go into, there's like a 30-minute monitoring checkpoint in Burness, and basically they just fettle you over there to make sure that you're safe enough to set off over the Cheviots, because there's hut 1 and hut 2, but there isn't very much of anything over that section. It's really bleak. So yeah, you go in there and they're just sort of asking you a few questions. She gave me some codeine for my shin because I was struggling with that, and then I went and tried to have a little nap in the church, which is where Tom took the photo then just as I'd bedded down. Oh, do you know what? I was so tired, so I curled up on the floor of the church. Obviously Tom took the photo and I just got comfortable, found a little blanket to put over myself, shut my eyes, nodded off, and then somebody came in and started sweeping. The guy, I think he must be the caretaker of the church, bless him. So I just literally shut my eyes, ready for a nap, just managed to get warm enough that I could fall asleep, and I heard this shh, shh. And I thought, what the hell's that? Open my eyes and this man's just sweeping up all the mud. Obviously that the racers had dropped on the down the aisle of the church and he was sweeping, and I just opened my eyes and I just thought, I am not going to get back to sleep now. So I started to sit up and he went, "Oh, hiya, you're right." He said, "Hey, have you been having a good race?" And I was like, "Yeah, thank you." But they put a little tea and coffee station in the church as well. So I made myself a coffee then. Next to that, Martin was still fast asleep on one of the pews. So he managed to sleep through the sweeper. And then I got up and started off over the Cheviots then for the
And
last day.
why did you choose to sleep on the altar? Because it's a brilliant photograph.
It was just so there was a couple of people in the pews at either side. It's only a really small church, so that was really the only other place I could sleep, right
Okay.
at the front. There were people. I think there might only be 5 pews each side, so it's a really cute little church. So that were the only, and there's 2 mats on the floor, and those were there already. So I laid down on them. So someone else must have already made their little bed out. So I just thought, oh, that looks comfy.
Because it was almost like the alternative Yorkshire nativity scene. This is it. This is it. It was brilliant. And I noticed as well that the Bishop of Newcastle, who's a keen follower, she had tweeted about how the church opens its doors for the spine race and people are welcome. And she loved the fact that that photograph had been used. So well done. What, do you know Tom's last name who took the photograph?
Tom Hoyle.
Tom Hoyle, because
Tom Hoyle, yeah. So
it's
on
an
his
absolute belter.
Instagram, his Instagram handles Ultra I'm Possible.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Okay.
Ultra I'm
Cool.
Possible.
Cool. Because it's only right that he gets credit for that because it's a brilliant picture. Now, when you leave Burness, I hear all about Hut 1 and Hut 2. What are they literally huts? What's that Hut 2?
No, yeah, they're literally just a shed, just a little shed that's plonked on the hill. So I can't remember how far they were actually from Burness until we got to the huts. The first one seemed ages to get to, but the guys in Hut 1 and Hut 2 were just absolutely brilliant. So bearing in mind, they get up there for the start of the race and they're camped out in little tents outside the hut for the full week, because once you're up there you're stuck up there for the week. So they had a little bit of music playing. The first hut had, when you went in, they had 4 boards on the wall, so they were writing down everybody's name, everybody's number and the time and the day. So when I looked at the boards on the wall, the first one was Damien Hall, because he was doing a recce of the new
Oh,
Chalet
yeah.
Sprint North route. So obviously he'd been through on his recce of the route. So his name was first and LA second, because those two were doing the recce. And then it was just great looking at everybody's names and
Mm.
what times and what days they'd been through. And I was looking for the girls' names to see. And all the Challenger North people, obviously they'd been through as well. So they were just absolutely brilliant in the huts, because they knew that people were completely buggered by then, but they were really cheery, made you a cup of tea, like heated up any dehydrated meals that you wanted, and then you carried on. But literally they are just a square wooden hut, nothing in
Wow.
there at all. Yeah.
Amazing. So you don't stop there. You just
Uh,
as a
I stopped there, cup of tea,
cup of
just had a
tea
cup
and
of
then
tea, and then carried on. Yeah, carried on to the next hut. So hut 2 then is, you come down off one of the descents that was bloody horrible. Um, and I fell so many times going down there. Martin were laughing his head off. I spent half of my time sat on my ass. Got to hut 2. They were playing. So the two of the guys that were in hut 2 were Young Hearts Run Free listeners.
brilliant.
And when I got in there, they had the Venga Boys lined up, because that's one of the songs that I'd picked when we did a
Yeah,
podcast
yeah.
before. So yeah, so 2 of them were podcast listeners, really, really nice guys. And they said, "Oh, we've got you tunes lined up." So they played Venga Boys, made me a cup of tea, some more codeine for my leg just to get me through to finish. And then you set off from hut 2 on the
I love that
final.
because they'll be watching your dog getting the Venga
Yeah,
boys lined up. I love that.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
brilliant.
They
So
they were
well done.
Yeah, they were absolutely brilliant. Each runner, they'd done a little bit of research on each person. So they
Mm.
had a song. I don't know how they managed to find out. Obviously, for mine, they'd listened to Young Arts Run Free and got the Venga Boys. But other people, I don't know how they'd managed to find out what their song were. But they were playing that for you, and oh yeah, it were brilliant. That.
They're just the wee touches that make a massive difference, eh? Just
Oh,
something like that.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
awesome.
Because you feel like you're nearly there when you get to up 2, but there's another climb to do called the
Mm.
Shill since then. So you go up and over the Shill before you drop down. Um, so every time you just think, oh, I'm nearly there, I'm nearly there. Something else just in your way to get to finish.
Again, though, that's the beauty of doing a recce because
Oh yeah.
although I never knew it was called the shill, but you're doing that. So let's go at the top of the shill.
hmm
Is that you're then on the final descent into Kirk Yetholm? Is that what happens?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
you get up to the top of the hill, which I couldn't see because it were dark by then.
yeah,
And for some reason I couldn't remember the shill from when we did the recce. I don't know why. Maybe because we were all just chatting so much. But I thought it was Hut 2 and then downhill all the way. And I was with Martin again by then, and he says, "Oh, we've just got to go up and over at Shill." And I was like, "Ah, damn it!"
yeah, because you're late. I'm looking at this. You got to Hut 2 at 5:30 on Friday
Yeah,
in the evening, and then just under 3 hours later, you were approaching Kirk Yetholm. So that describe that leaving Hut 2. Is there emotions going through you then? You know you're going to finish. You know you're going.
yeah, oh
Or
yeah.
yeah. So what was going through your mind at that point?
Um, well, I was with Martin then, and we'd decided that we were going to both walk to the finish together. But then, I was just getting so cold. So I said to my shin was hurting so much. And I said to Martin, while these codeines have kicked in, I'm just going to have to run to the finish and just needed to get it get it over with, and get the pain in my leg to stop. So. I managed to run that last bit, but you know it's not far away, so you set off running and you manage to do maybe 100 meters, and then you think, oh, I'm gonna have to walk because my leg were hurting. So you walk a couple of paces, and then you think, oh no, run, it'll be over quicker. So you set off running again, and you're just in this weird, like running 50 meters and then having to walk, but then realizing walking's really slow, so you try and run again. And I knew my mum and dad were going to be there, so that were great.
Brilliant.
But yeah, it's a weird feeling because I expected to cross the line and burst into tears, but I think you're just that relieved and you're in that much pain by then that
Mm.
you're glad that you've finished.
Yeah.
Weird.
When does it come into sight? Because it's night time and they've got lights at Kirk Yetholm at the pub and they've got the archways and they're all lit up. When do you actually see it? How far away from the finish when you actually see the lights?
Oh, only 100 meters, something like that.
Ah,
When
okay.
you see it, because it's hola. Yes, thank you.
We are
Clean.
live. We're authentic. I love it.
The cleaners here. um, yeah, you don't actually see Kirk Yetholm until right until the last minute. You're only maybe 100 meters from the finish because there's a real steep road climb, and you go up and over the hill, run down the road a little bit, and then you can just see it on the right hand side, as
Okay.
you come into into the village. So it's right at the last moment when you manage to see
Mm.
the lights.
And there's a good crowd and people there at the finish, isn't there? It's quite brilliant.
Yeah,
And your folks were there, and then
yeah,
you touch the wall, you kiss the wall,
yeah,
you do whatever you want to the wall. An achievement,
yeah,
an achievement are quite magnificent. You know, it's just the strength, the resilience, the character, the physical, the mental, the emotional things that you must be going through then. But just to touch that wall and know you're done, was it?
mm.
Can you describe how you were feeling then when it was over?
It just it, I don't know. Yeah, it's really hard to describe how you feel, because in one way everything just hurts so much that you're just glad it's over. In another way, you're just so like proud of yourself for managing to get there. And then you start thinking back of the days that what you've been through to actually get to the finish. And it's a bit overwhelming actually, because you've spent so much time on your own, and then all of a sudden you come into Kirk Yetholm and there's all the people around. As soon as you cross the line, they do like a little mini interview with you,
Yeah,
because then they gather some information to put out on your finish post. So for every finisher, they do a Facebook post and a little write up, which is really good. And they obviously take that information off what you say at the finish, but your brain's complete mush by then. So
yeah.
you're just waffling along.
Sorry, I'm just looking at my phone there. The reason I'm looking at it is Lorna Davenport was there and she filmed you finishing, but she shared
Ah,
and tagged in Young Hearts Run Free. So massive, getting a bit emotional thinking about it. Massive thank you to Lorna Davenport for sharing that with us, because we were then able to share that on Instagram as well. So thank you, Lorna.
yeah,
Um, who gave you your medal?
my mum.
I thought it was that, because everybody was getting
Yeah.
medals from like the guys for the race team and stuff, and all I can make out was somebody saying there's somebody here. That's a brilliant touch as well, isn't it? So
Yeah. So my mum
brilliant.
managed to, and they'd waited there. I think they'd been there since, I don't know, 4 or 5 o'clock, waiting for me to come in. Bless them.
Mm.
So they were probably looking at my dot, thinking, "For God's sake, get on with it, lass."
They never had
But I
too
did.
long. They never had too long to wait. You'll get a cup of tea at the pub, and then there you go. Then you're coming home, which
And
is
then I come in.
brilliant.
And then I had, so when you finish, you go into the border hotel and you have one of the volunteers allocated to look after you. And mine was lovely Lindsay.
Mad Maggie from Twitter,
Yes.
yeah, who's been a spine. You mentioned about people going back. Lindsay's been there a number of times as well. So over to you. Say a few words about Lindsay.
She was just absolutely brilliant when I finished. So I think they did have some food on, but me and Martin had been talking about getting a burger. And Martin, actually, from Hut 2, he'd rung the pub and pre-ordered me and him. I think they're called border burgers or something.
Okay,
So no, so he was actually with it enough to ring the hotel from Hut 2 to put us order in for his burgers.
brilliant.
So I had the burger, but Lindsay was just great. I don't, she must have seen people in all sorts of states, but she took my socks off. She gave me a little bowl of hot water to put my feet in. Like just looked after you, sorted your stuff out, sorted your bag out. She were brilliant, and it were really nice to have somebody like her there at the finish. So somebody you recognise, somebody you know, somebody who knows
Mhm.
you. And she looked after me. And then Nikki Ligo was there at the finish as well. So then I stole her brew off her and we had a bit of a chat as well.
No, but it's brilliant. And you said it's nice to have somebody that you know and you recognise, and it's all people are really lovely and attached and invested in the whole running journey, So
Mm.
I love how it all comes together. I'm really happy that it was your mum that gave you the medal. I never knew that. So that's why I was really wanting to ask. I love that.
Yeah.
Um, how does this 268 miles, uh, how does that make you feel about the other distances like 50 miles, 100 miles that you've been used to doing? You've done 120 before, haven't you? You've done the UTS, was a long one, wasn't it?
No, UTS, I did the 50K
Right. Okay. Okay.
at UTS.
But well, having done 268, what's next for Mel Sykes?
No longer. No, no longer. I would like to go back to the spine again at some point, but I don't think I'll go any further. If there is anything further than that, I don't think that was my bucket list race really, and it definitely doesn't make the shorter ones any easier because I think you're more likely to race those. I don't
Mm.
know. You put
And
the effort in.
yeah, it's about how you approach that distance at the start, isn't it? It's because then that's where
Yeah.
your mind is at the start, what you're doing. So yeah, wow. What have you? How long are you taking off?
Running.
Yeah,
Um, Probably a month, I think.
yeah, and it would
Yeah.
and it would also be remiss of me, and a lot of people will now be saying, "Are you going to ask her about her shin? How is your shin?"
It's sore. It's sore. I think it's still a little bit swollen actually. So when that goes down a little bit, but touch wood. So I fell about maybe a mile from the maybe a mile from the end. Me and Martin were together, and after I'd said to him, "Oh, I'm going to set off and run this last bit," I must have got maybe set off running maybe 20 meters away from him and tripped over a rock. So I've cracked all my. I know, honestly, you just couldn't believe it. That was just tired. That was just tiredness. It was dark. Tripped over this rock, ripped a hole in the pouch that I had across the front. That's why it's not on the finish photo, because it's got a big rip across from it. So I took that off before I crossed the line and cracked my ribs. So my ribs on the right hand side are a little bit sore from that fall. But apart from that, I think I don't touch wood. I don't think there's any injuries. I think it's just general knackeredness that hopefully should settle down. But yeah, my ribs have been the worst, especially because I got a bit of a cold in the days after. So every cough and sneeze were hurting my ribs. But that's my own bloody fault for trying to run that last bit.
And you still managed that wee jump at the finish. What was that all about? Where'd that come from?
I don't know. The last bit when I've been jogging in, I've been thinking, oh, what shall I do when I cross the line? Do you put your hands in air, or do you just go, yes, get in? And then I just ended up doing some weird little jump. I don't know where it came from. But the photo actually, so the photo they used for my finish is sort of mid-jump in it.
Yeah,
and I'm like halfway through a skip. So yeah, that made me laugh because that wasn't pre-planned. It just kind of happened.
Just roll with it, and then
just roll with it.
You're going back to Lakeland 100 this summer, aren't you?
Yes,
yeah,
I'll be back at Lakeland. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to that. That's a good event. Looking forward to seeing everybody there.
And will that be will that be you from now until the summer, or will you do a bit of recovery and then do a couple of smaller things in between?
Yeah, I'll probably do. So there's a local company near me called Crag Runner, and I do quite a lot of their events. Either volunteer there or run those. So hopefully I'll get back to doing some of those. But I didn't really put anything in the plan because you just don't know how you're going to recover from something like that, do you? And you don't know whether you're going to end up with an injury. So I didn't want to put pressure on myself to start running again too soon. So I think I'll probably have a month off. Make sure everything's working again as it should before I start. Because the worst thing you can do is just start too soon, isn't it?
Definitely. Yeah. And you've done the right thing. You're not in Yorkshire today, obviously.
No, I'm not in Yorkshire today. Well, I only booked this on Monday, actually, to come on Tuesday. So yeah, I just went online and I just thought I can either slob about at home or I can slob about in a bit of heat. So
yeah, cool. And how has this? I know we spoke about you're waking up from sleep and still thinking you're in checkpoints and wanting to get your kit together and do that. And you spoke about your shin and you spoke about your ankles, but overall, we are literally a week later. Overall, how are you feeling?
yeah, today, I think yesterday, so I lost my voice. That didn't come back until maybe 2 days ago. Got a bit of cold, which is just immune system being completely battered in it for a week. But actually yesterday and today, I felt all right again. So I think starting to get back to some normality and feeling a bit more normal. But yeah, it took a while. I didn't know what date was. We really spaced out for a few days. Obviously, we tried to catch up, didn't we? And I just did not. My brain was not functioning at all.
That was the interview I wanted. That one. And what about your appetite? Have you got hunger?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think because I didn't have it on my Garmin as a full route, but I think it were about 40,000 calories that I burnt. So yeah, that's just been eating everything, having to eat every couple of hours, which is ideal when you're somewhere like this and you've just got access to the buffet.
Yeah, fantastic.
Sneaking some sandwiches from breakfast.
It's all part of life's rich tapestry. I do believe that. Well, I think, Mel, we've covered everything. I think that, or just for just now, I'm sure there will be people shouting at whatever, either in the car or in the headphones if they're out running. But why didn't you ask this? So, an open invitation to people. If you've got a question, let us know, and we can pose it to Mel if there's questions about this. Can I ask you one final thing, actually? A few words about Lucy Gossage.
Oh, yeah, I am just in awe of that woman. She's absolutely brilliant. I know on a lot of the videos, she was just in such good spirits, but there was some real dark moments as well, especially overnight. I think that's where it gets people overnight. And she was on her own for quite a lot of the race as well, once you saw. You get into your own head. But how she managed to run that time over some of that terrain, it's just unbelievable. It's just
Yeah,
unbelievable.
yeah,
She's just so talented, and I hope she does go back and do it again, because I think that was a second time. I think if she does want to go back and do it a third time, I think she's got a real good chance of winning the thing overall.
yeah. I mean, we should put context to this for people listening in. Lucy Gossage finished First Lady in 87 hours. Quite mind-blowing to do that in the
Yeah.
conditions.
Yeah,
Absolutely
absolutely.
phenomenal.
Yeah, because
Phenomenal.
if you think, if it hadn't have been those conditions, how much quicker would she have been? What time could
Mm,
she have run? She's just, yeah,
yeah,
unbelievable.
yeah,
And she's
brilliant.
great as well. She's just such a great person as well, and so lovely to be around. Really good company. And really
Brilliant.
supportive as well. Yeah, she's been really supportive, messaging after the race to make sure that how asking how I'm feeling and how recovery is, and that sort of thing. So yeah.
Oh, there you go. Thank you for sharing that, because that's an insight we wouldn't have had. So thank you for sharing that. One final question, though, and it's a musical one. This is a big email. What song are you going to add into the Young Hearts Run Free playlist?
Oh, do you know what? I've been thinking about this. Um, and it's probably an unexpected one for most people, but it's the one that reminds me of the race the most. And it's Billy Ray Cyrus and Achy Breaky Heart. It's got nothing to do with race at all, apart from, so that 5 miles when I was sleepwalking down into Burness, I had that on repeat. So I was going down this fire track, and if I got to Burness at 8:30 in the morning, so this must have been sort of 4, 5, 6 a.m., something like that, going down the fire track. And I ended up playing that song. I don't know why, I just ended up playing it over and over again as I was walking down, doing a little bit of line dancing in between the sleepwalking, but it just kept me awake. I think it was because it was a song that's so random, not obviously my usual music that I'd listen to, but that was on, and it was just, yeah, I was just singing that out loud in the middle of the forest, trying to keep myself awake. So
Brilliant.
that's what I'm going with.
So, for anybody who's listening to this and you see a runner out this weekend or in the next few weeks and you see them breaking into a line dance, going across whatever run they're doing, it's probably Mel Sykes inspired. So, a tune from the Mel Sykes random playlist. I love it. Billy Ray
That's a
Cyrus.
word. Yeah.
Fantastic. Mel, thank you so much for giving us your time, especially when you're in this very important first week of recovery. People have been chapping at the bit, chapping at my door. When are you getting the Yorkshire Correspondent on? So thank you for doing that so quickly, and congratulations on a fantastic achievement. 268 miles on the Pennine Way, the spine race. Completed it, mate. Well done,
Completed
Mel.
it, mate. Thank you very much. Yeah, really chuffed, absolutely chuffed to bits to finish. Chuffed to bits.
Cue Billy Ray Cyrus.